Your Humanities Half Hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Welcome to your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry Harris, and with us today we have no strangers to the show, Kathy Jetnil-Kijiner and also Daniel Lin. They're here in the Marianas to put on a Storytellers workshop this week. And Kathy, Daniel, welcome to your Humanities Half Hour.
Hi, we're so glad to be here.
Thanks, yeah.
Wow,
Thanks for having us.
It's almost like you guys are now like community members because this is like the third time in a year that we've seen you almost or something like that.
I definitely am starting to feel a lot more comfortable for sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's always nice to be back in Saipan and in the Marianas. This is I think my fourth or fifth time too.
Yeah, and funny, Daniel, you and I just ran into each other in Yap a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy looks familiar. His name is familiar. And I was like, oh, it's Daniel. Well, you guys are here to bring your experience and your skill to our community, specifically for a Storytellers workshop. What is this all about?
Well, Kathy and I have both individually and together, we've been conducting these kinds of workshops with youth around the Pacific, and the whole point of this is to acknowledge the fact that oral traditions and storytelling is a strong part and an integral part of our island cultures, and to do so in a more modern way and trying to get young people more comfortable and more connected to their own voice and their own and doing so through a digital media and a modern day platform. So we're really excited just to come back here and do that with the youth of the Marianas.
So give us an idea of how this would work. Kathy, a lot of people know you from your presentation to the United Nations. How will this workshop help our youth tell their story?
For me, I really believe in connecting to your own personal journey to be able to connect to larger issues, issues outside of yourselves. Like something like climate change feels so big, but when we connect to how we got here, how we are connected to our land, how we are connected to our community, it becomes easier to find the passion to fight for that community, to fight against whatever might be threatening it. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. So I know it sounds a little bit confusing, but it's basically trying to get students to use poetry to tap into their own memories and their own personal journey.
Now, Daniel, you mentioned digital media, and you're a contributor to National Geographic, Associated Press. Tell us how you got started, first of all, and interested in this field.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not something that I started off being interested in, but every place I go to with working in these communities, particularly around education, which is where I began, there's just amazingly powerful stories, and there's also really, really talented young people who have really good grasp of their technology, really good grasp of their local communities, and so it just became a natural thing to try and work a little bit more focused on getting that to a more global and international stage. Getting them to publish their own work and trying to empower them.
Well, before we get too far into this, let's mention the whens and wheres of this workshop. It's going to be 3 hours a day.
Monday through Thursday of next week, 9 a.m. to noon at the Marianas High School.
Yes. Marianas High School Library. And the good news is it's absolutely free.
Mm-hmm. And it's pretty much open to anyone who's interested in joining, yeah.
Now, I can imagine there are some young people listening out there, and as you said, adults are also welcome. They're really good with words.
Mm-hmm.
They like to write, they keep a journal, maybe it's their profession. And then you have those people who, aren't that good with words. Mm-hmm. What is the pull for them to come to this event?
Right.
I have a lot of, like, for me, I've been teaching this poetry workshop, and the most crucial stage of the poetry workshop is not even when they've written something. It's actually the editing stage, when I get to work with them one-on-one to really help them shape the poem from whatever it is that they've written. It could just look like a paragraph, but at the end of it, they have a full piece that's just theirs, that's about their memory, their experience, and no one else could have written it. And I've seen that across the board, from, you know, Marshall East middle school students to Rhodes Scholars to high school students in Portland, and it's you know, I think everyone has the capacity to be a poet and a storyteller. Yeah.
Right. And personally, I'm not good with words either, and I communicate a lot visually, and so I know that a lot of people that I work with, they tend to go one way or the other, and so it's good to have the balance of me and Kathy, who, you know, she's really good with words and really good with verbalizing her experiences, and for me to do it visually. So we're actually going to provide that duality for students. I'm going to be focusing on photography and visual elements of storytelling, and Kathy's going to be doing more with kind of the wordsmithing.
Yeah, poetry.
And so we're going to combine that, and so students who are participating, or anybody that's participating, is going to get to experience both of that and see where maybe where their strengths are, and be able to kind of flex those muscles.
Give us an idea of maybe somebody you've had come to this workshop elsewhere who was really hesitant, like maybe they had 1 foot in and 1 foot out the door, and what was the result at the end?
Well, there was this one student in Palau, and he was writing about climate change, and, you know, and he was sort of like, his first draft was just sort of like about how climate change matters to him, and that he's seen changes in his island. It wasn't, you know, it was just a paragraph. But then I said, what are those changes you've seen? And then he said, oh, you know, I used to go fishing and we'd come back with a boat full of fish. And then the other time I went back fishing, there was no fish. So I said, okay, focus in on those two experiences. Now for me, the poem that came out of that, he wrote this really beautiful piece where we're there with him, diving into the water, spearfishing with him, paddling the canoe with him, hearing the jokes his uncle is telling, and that's all him, you know? He just needed help focusing in on it, and that's exactly what I can do with with other people. You know, I can just help them, support them in focusing in.
Now, well, we are going to talk about this a little bit more in the later half of the show, because I wanted you guys to share some of your experiences in different communities. But can words and pictures really change anything?
I mean, I 100% believe that they can. If they didn't, I don't think I would pour so much of our collective's like sweat and energy into this. And I didn't know the power of words and pictures until I started. I'm a policy guy. I was trained in policy, and I felt personally that stories really, really shift the tide and help to guide policies because they connect people beyond a level of, you know, beyond just words and images. It's like some kind of like soul bonding.
Yeah, it's human connection. You put a human face to it, and that's exactly what storytelling does. It puts a human face to whatever issue there could be. I mean, that's what happened. I mean, I wouldn't have gotten to the UN if, you know, I hadn't been invested in telling my own story, telling the story of our island. And that's kind of what I hope that other young people see, that continuously telling that story and being in touch with that, you know, with how you got to where you are, can actually really help you, catapult you into places you never expected to be.
And it just kind of like empowers them. I think empowerment is a really powerful word, because somebody might have a story they don't feel like it's worth listening to, but until they tell it, and they see the responses, they see the fact that they can be heard beyond the scope of their own confines of their own walls. It's so powerful.
Everybody's got a story, you know.
Yeah. It might be that changing, you know, the straw that allows them to become kind of a future storyteller, future leader, or future whomever they choose to be.
What are some of the topics you've seen people take up going through this workshop?
So I've done it a few times, and a lot of times people want to write about climate change, and I think it's because they associate climate change with me, and a lot of times my presentations tend to be on climate change. But beyond that, like they'll talk about their fears of their islands. They'll talk about the loss of family members. When I did poetry workshops with Marshallese youth, middle school students in the Marshall Islands, I got a lot of stories about family members they've lost that they were grieving still, and that affected them. And then there's also been abuse and trauma that's come up as well, because they wanted and needed that space to talk about this that they didn't have before, So it's really up to the workshop that I do. It's really, again, it's focused entirely on their memories, what they choose to write about. And so whatever it is that they're processing at the moment, it'll come up. It just depends on how far they want to go, how deep they want to go.
Do you feel that this is in some way a form of therapy?
Oh, yes. I mean, I've always seen writing as therapy. I mean, writing basically got me through high school and, college. It was rough, and there's so many things you're processing and you don't really get what's happening half the time. But, when you put it down, it's kind of like getting a method to the madness, or it's like a method to madness or something like that. You get it off your chest. Yeah.
Kathy, you mentioned earlier, and I did also, about you going to the United Nations. For those that aren't familiar with that part of your story, share with us briefly what happened.
Basically, I was, after I performed Tell Them, so I put up a YouTube video of a poem called Tell Them, which is a poem I wrote about climate change. And the UN ambassador to the Marshall Islands saw it and nominated me to be the civil society representative at the UN Climate Summit in 2014. And so I was selected, and I ended up going. And because they knew I was a spoken word artist, they asked for me to write a brand new poem just for the opening. And so this was an opening in front of world leaders, and it was just this huge moment where I got to represent my island, but not just my island, but the Pacific and indigenous people. And then I was also able to use my art form, my poetry, and my own personal journey to speak on this issue that I was so passionate about. Yeah.
Were you nervous?
I was very nervous. I was scared. I couldn't sleep all night.
I was nervous.
For like 2 nights.
You were nervous watching. Well, that might be the pinnacle of how people could take what they learn at a workshop like this and use it to bring issues to the attention of the world or their local leaders or their community. So when we come back, I wanted to ask you to share some of your experience in other places, either with a workshop or other areas of your work where you find that this storytelling through words and images makes an impact. What do you guys think?
Sounds good. Great.
Perfect.
All right. We'll be back after this.
This September, the Northern Marianas Humanities Council, Northern Marianas College, University of Guam, and Guampedia will host the 3rd Marianas History Conference in Saipan. The conference theme, One Archipelago, Many Stories, Milestones in Marianas History, highlights the deep and rich history of the Mariana Islands. It also bridges the political division of the archipelago, which dates to the late 19th century. The conference steering committee is now accepting abstracts under the following general categories: ancient history, including the results of archaeological research; early colonial history in the 17th and 18th centuries; colonial history in the 19th and early 20th centuries; World War II, recent post-war, and oral history and genealogical research. For more information, visit the Northern Marianas Humanities Council website at northernmarianashumanities.org. That's northernmarianashumanities.org.
Welcome back to Your Humanities Half Hour. We're speaking today with Kathy Jetnil-Kijiner and also Daniel Lin. They're back here in the Marianas to conduct a Storytellers workshop this week. And although we mentioned the youth and the press release yesterday mentioned the youth, we do want to emphasize this is open to people of all ages, high school, college and up, or shall we say young adults and older. And it's going to be on Monday through Thursday this week from 9 to 12 at Marianas High School Library. And it's free. So awesome. And wanted to give you guys an opportunity to maybe share a little bit more about your experiences. I loved what was said about you, Daniel. You consider yourself a citizen of the world. Now, number one, why do you choose that word, and how much of the world have you seen?
Oh, okay. I've been to all 6 continents except for Antarctica, and so I don't know if that's, I don't know what percentage. I've really enjoyed traveling. not to see sights, but to talk to people. So I think being a citizen, me personally, grew up in New York and then moved around a bunch, and so in a way I don't have like what Kathy has, like a place called home to fight for. And so what I've really kind of grasped onto is this idea of like trying to connect to as many people as I can and feel like I can help in their journey somehow, and either telling their story on their behalf or supporting them in telling their own story. So that's kind of the citizen aspect.
What are some of the more memorable stories you've had in your experience? I'm not asking you to pick your favorite child, like that, but what are some more memorable stories you've helped people tell, or you've experienced people telling with your assistance? Personally, some of the stories that really resonate with me are like being on the ocean. So I really sailed with the Hawaiian canoe Hokulea for several years, and going around the world these last 3 years was really amazing, just to see communities in Africa, communities in all around the world, and just to hear their tales and then to tell that through National Geographic was really, really amazing. Working specifically with the community, I guess one that I really loved was Samoa, where I used to live, in the outer islands of American Samoa. They just got their whole island off of any diesel fuel, so all carbon emitting fuels. So they're completely solar now with the help of Tesla and Solar City. And we were able to tell that story from the lens of the students. They were learning from Solar City people, and then they were communicating that, and then we've shared that across the board, and it was really powerful for the students there. And so it just felt good to go back to a community that I love so much. Being able to say that you photograph for National Geographic is just cool. Okay, it's just cool. How did you get hooked up with this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get asked that a lot, and so I have no photographic background. I was never trained, but like I said, I used to live in Samoa, and I was working out there, just being part of the community, and there was very little connectivity, and so I wasn't able to talk about it or share those experiences that were so different from my upbringing in the East Coast. And so I started to take pictures with this little dinky handheld camera. And I was taking pictures, writing about this is what a coconut crab looks like, and I was trying to explain it as eloquently as possible. And friends at National Geographic there's through friends and connections, National Geographic heard about it, and there was this a grant called the Young Explorers Grant that's actually still in existence for people under 25 to go around and tell stories of a specific place. And so they sent me back to Samoa because they were so fascinated with some of the stories that I was telling, and that's how it all began. And once you build a relationship, you just continue to kind of share stories and talk about it, and it hasn't stopped. So that was when I was 22 and 20.
You mean you're not 22? I mean, you both look 22.
We're in our 20s, but in the sunset years of our 20s, I guess.
Tail end.
Well, Kathy, last time we talked to you, you were teaching college, but now you also are kind of traveling the world.
Yeah, so my contract ended at the College of the Marshall Islands, and I've basically moved to Portland to be with my partner and kind of for family issues in Oregon. And at the same time, my book came out, and I kind of decided to just focus on performing and writing and promoting the book and doing workshops like these. So, I've been kind of all over the place lately: London, Australia, Japan, just talking about climate change, connecting on nuclear issues, and also doing poetry workshops,
So tell us about your book.
Oh, okay. So it's called Jetnil-Kijine, Poems from a Marshallese Daughter. It's my first collection of poetry. It's
Congratulations!
Thank you.
It's really awesome.
Yeah, it's a huge thing for me. I'm very excited. It's the only book that's been published by a Marshallese outside of the Marshall Islands. That's a collection of poetry, and so I'm hoping that by doing this, it'll open the doors for other Marshallese to publish and to do their own writing and to share their own stories. But basically, it's just a collection of things that I've experienced, and it includes the poems I performed at the UN, and it's about my journey, and it also has poetry about my culture and my legends and our history. Yeah.
Is it in English, Marshallese, or both?
It's mostly in English. It does have Marshallese like peppered throughout it, of course, but yeah, it is in English.
Now, you mentioned there's an important conference coming up that you're going to be a part of regarding climate change, and it's particularly tied to the Pacific this year.
Yeah, so it's called the COP, the Conference of the Parties, and basically every year it's a worldwide conference on climate change where the whole world comes together to continue looking at how to like tackle the issue of climate change as an entire world. And this year is big because the president of the COP, which they select every year, is a Fijian prime minister. And it means that we're trying to make it the Pacific COP. And there's a lot of organizing and a lot of opportunity to get young people involved, at least even online, and to get their voices heard on climate change and to kind of mobilize them to share their stories and to talk about how climate change is impacting their islands. And so I'm hoping that I can get as many Saipan youth to jump on board and join our campaign as possible. Yeah.
And when and where is that going to be?
So that's actually in Bonn, in Germany, this November. Yeah.
Okay. Talk to us a little bit about, first of all, you guys are both on social media for people who are interested. How can we find you or follow your group? You also have a nonprofit.
Yeah, so our nonprofit is finally taking off. We've got funding, and it's called Jetnil-Kijine, which means it's basically Youth for Greener Marshall Islands, but it means your place, your home. And so we're building our first youth center, the Jetnil-Kijine Youth Center for Green Action. Basically we're going to be training Marshallese youth to get involved in environmentalism, and we've got funding for that. We've got funding for our first full-time position, so it's a huge opportunity for us. So yes, we do have a Facebook page where we'll be updating people on our campaign strategies for the upcoming COP and any of the work that Jetnil is doing. But me and Dan, we're both on Instagram, Facebook. Are you on Twitter?
Things I post get shared to Twitter. I don't know how Twitter works.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, but we're in and out.
And we're both connected to. We're like when we work collaboratively. We're basically under this program called the Pacific Storytellers Cooperative, and it's funded through an organization called PREL. And so that's also, there's a website for that, storytellers.prel.org, and all the stories that we collect and work with students get posted there, so the students feel, they get to actually see published work online. And it's great for a portfolio or a college application or just for personal,
They can just
pride.
Share it on Facebook with their friends, and it's great, to see the reaction they get from their family members. We've seen it.
We just came from Palau, literally this morning.
Yeah.
And all last week we were doing workshops with Palau youth. And it was just really powerful to see, the stories that, Kathy works with them on identifying their own personal journeys, and that blossoms into a story, and then they share that story or a poem, and to see the reaction they get, and the pride they feel in their own story is just
and then they get all these family members chiming in. It's so sweet.
It's really
cute. Great. Yeah.
Let's talk to the high school students who are on vacation right now, and I'm seeing posts on Facebook. I'm bored, So first of all, is this going to be fun?
Oh yeah, it's going to be so much fun. Yeah.
That's the number one sell. Okay, if you guys haven't gotten that yet, these are fun people, and you can bring your friends. That's another thing. It's more fun if you do it with friends. So
we'll be doing a lot of activities besides just writing and taking photos.
Yeah, it's not going to be like school. Okay?
Yeah,
it's not 4 days of writing. Yeah, it's a lot of different ways of engaging with each other and yourself, and we're also going to get engaged with the the landscape and the place of Saipan itself and the Marianas as a whole. So we're just really grateful to be guests in this place, and we love to learn about land and stories through youth in these communities.
Yeah, we'd love to learn from you guys. That's why we're here. Yeah.
Well, any final thoughts before we go?
I'm just really happy to be here again. Saipan is so beautiful, and the community is always so welcoming. So I just can't wait to connect with more people. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, if you love if you have an interest in writing and or like visuals or photography, and you want to learn more, if you want to hear Kathy even like perform or hear how she does it, what her story is like, or if you just want to come and have fun, hang out, and share your stories, please do consider joining us. We'll be stoked to have you.
Yeah.
And give us those dates and times again.
Okay, it's the dates are basically it's Monday through Thursday, 9 to 12 at the Marianas High School Library.
Okay,
and if you have like a camera phone or anything, just bring anything that can record. That would be great. If not, we'll try to share.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's great. What should people bring? So bring a camera if you have it, or obviously a camera phone.
Or just anything like
and
that.
do people need to bring notebooks? Should they bring a notebook?
We'll provide. Yeah,
we'll provide paper, pencil.
We'll have some stuff.
Yeah.
Just come to have fun. And it's going to be a lot of cool exploration.
Yeah.
We'll be exploring as well.
I think I just showed my age because I was like, bring a notebook or your tablet or your computer.
Bring a pencil sharpener.
I like to write.
I prefer writing with pencil and paper too. It forces you to slow down. Yeah.
I'm all about typing. Click.
It's your choice. Well, thank you so much, guys, for making time for us today. And it sounds like it's going to be a great workshop, a lot of fun. And we look forward to the stories that are going to come out of it. In fact, this is my standing invitation, for any of the young people or the people who participate to share their stories here on our show after.
Yeah, if
of course.
If a great poem or if they're confident with what they come up with, I would love to hear it on the radio as well.
All right.
Thanks, Kat.
This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry Harris.
This program was supported by a We the People grant awarded to the Northern Marianas Humanities Council from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.